Hi, welcome to Making All the Plans. I'm Connie, and if we haven't met before, I'm a busy mom of 2 active kids, and both my husband and I have full-time careers. My goal is to share with you how I stay on top of all life throws at me in one planner so that you might be able to do the same. Today I'm going to play around with my Hobonichi Cousin. I'm really having fun playing around with this planner and just being able to experiment in it without the pressure of trying to keep it perfect. I am new to the Hobonichi world, so if I use the wrong terms, feel free to correct me down below. But my goal today is to make a pencil board so that I can keep my place in the Hobonichi Cousin planner. The first thing I'm going to do is take the measurements of the planner so that I can calculate what size I want my pencil board to be. I do want to laminate my pencil board, so I will take that into account as well. The initial measurements were 8 1/4 by 5 3/4, and then I want to take away a 1/2 inch so that I can have a 1/4 inch border around the entire pencil board. So my final measurements are 7 3/4 by 5 1/4. So that's what size I want my paper to be. And then I will laminate my paper and cut it down to the size that I actually want it. I did think about kind of scrapbooking on this page and then laminating it, but I wasn't sure how thick I would really want my pencil board to be. So I'm going to start with just a piece of paper. And I did grab a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock because that's what I have a lot of in my craft room. But I'm going to start by cutting down this piece of paper to an 8 1/2 by 11 sheet so that I can feed it through my printer. I am going to put my word of the year on this sheet of paper before turning it into my pencil board. So as a reminder, mostly to myself, I need to trim this sheet down to 7 3/4 by 5 1/4. And I tried to make the box on Photoshop so that it was a 1/4 inch away from where I wanted to trim the paper. So there'll be a 1/4 inch around the box and then a 1/4 inch around the entire piece of paper. So hopefully that makes sense. But right now we are cutting this piece of paper down to 7 3/4 or 7.75 by 5 1/4 or 5.25. I did try to put crop marks in when I printed them, but I always have a tendency to cut the edges in the wrong order, so I end up losing my crop marks. So in case you're wondering what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to use those crop marks so I don't have to think as much when I'm trying to leave that 1/4 inch around the box. And this is a Fisker's paper trimmer. This is my favorite paper trimmer that I've had, and I've had quite a few of these. I feel like this one is the best at cutting a straight line. So now that I have my paper cut down to size, I am going to clean off my desk just a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work. I do have that buffalo plaid out because I want to make a tab for the top, but right now I'm a little scared that I cut this too small. I did plan on leaving a 1/4 inch around the whole sheet of paper, but I'm a little afraid that that might be too much. But we're going to keep moving forward and we're going to just go ahead and work on the tab for the top of this pencil board. Right now, I'm debating on whether I want to use that self-adhesive tab as it is, or if I'm just going to use it as a guide and trace it onto that buffalo plaid pattern and cut it out. And I know that I can't probably put that tab through the laminator, so I'm thinking it's going to hold up better if I actually cut out the tab from the buffalo plaid and then glue it to the sheet of paper, and then I want to run the whole thing through the laminator the paper and the tab combined, and that way it'll be a little bit more sturdy. I am going to speed up me cutting out this tab. I do take my time fussy cutting, so I'm sorry if this is a little rough since it is sped up, but I didn't think that you wanted me to show this to you in real time. I also cut out a second tab so that I could back the buffalo plaid back to back and you could see it on both sides, and I did that off camera. And like I mentioned, I didn't really plan this out. I'm still trying to figure this out as I'm making the pencil board. So bear with me here. I'm just trying to decide if I want the tab to be overlapped on the front and the back, or if I just want to attach it to the back and you don't necessarily see the base of the tab on the front. I will use just a little bit of adhesive here and tape the top part of the tab together so I can get a better idea of what it would look like if I do overlap the tab on the front and the back of my pencil board. So I'll tape this together and then I will be able to play around with it a little bit better. Which way would you pick? Would you put it behind or would you tuck it over top so that it's showing on both the front and the back? I really like this pattern, so I'm thinking that I want to overlap it so that it is sandwiched around my pencil board. Still thinking that I cut the actual paper itself too small, but I'm going to try to push on and not second guess myself just yet. And then I will try to make the edge of this tab a little bit straighter since I am planning on overlapping it. I did also decide that I was going to ink the edges of this tab, so I just grabbed this Tim Holtz, I think it's a black soot that I'm using for the edges, and I'm trying to get the edges and get in between the little groove that sticking those together formed so that you don't see any of the white. That's why I'm taking a little bit of extra time here, just trying to cover up any of the white that is showing from the backside of the paper. And normally I would use some liquid glue here with a fine liner applicator, but it has been so long since I have used this that I'm pretty sure that the glue has dried up. Not in the tip itself because there is a needle that goes in the tip, but in the bottle. So instead, I will use my Tombow tape runner to lay down a little bit of tape on the paper itself, and I'll rub away the excess, and I'll put a little bit on the back as well, keeping in mind that it doesn't have to be perfect or even permanent because when I run it through the laminator, everything will get stuck into place permanently. So I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to get enough tape on it where it will hold it in place as it goes through the laminator. And I'm still wondering whether or not this is going to be big enough and debating on whether or not I should mat it with another paper. But I think I'm going to try it as is. If all else fails, I do have more paper. I do have more laminating sheets. So I think this will be a good test for me to see if I like a 1/4 inch border or if I would prefer to go closer. On the laminated sheets that I have, there is one end that is already closed. So I am going to use the flat bottom edge to go against that. And I'm going to try to space it out 1/4 inch away from the bottom and 1/4 inch away from one side so I don't have to trim as much and try to make everything square. So my main goal right now is to get this piece of paper in the lamination sheet where there is 1/4 inch around the bottom and one side, and to have it so that it is straight. I did flip over the piece of paper so that I wasn't trying to line up the box or the lettering or anything like that. I just had a plain sheet of paper that didn't have any distraction on it. And then I will go ahead and use my T-square to make sure that I do have 1/4 of an inch both at the bottom and at the top of the side, and also the 1/4 of an inch along the bottom. Now that I'm good to go, I'm going to heat up my laminator. I don't have a place to plug it in at my desk right now, so I do have that off to the side. It does take probably 5 minutes for it to warm up, and then I will run it through and we'll come back and see the final product. After running it through the laminator one time, I didn't feel like it had the greatest seal around the tab. So I did decide to go ahead and run it through one more time just to make sure all of those connections were sealed properly. And that way I had a little bit more room for error when I trim out that tab area. And I think that part of the problem is I do have 2 sheets of paper back to back for the tab, as well as the third sheet in between the tabbed area. So it makes that area a little bit thicker. So it's harder for the laminator to get super close to that thicker area. The second pass did help a little bit, but not as much as I would have liked. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim down the lamination so that it leaves 1/4 of an inch hangover from the paper that I've laminated. And it's going to get a little bit tricky around the tab. I wish I had a tab cutout or a tab punch that would help, but I don't, so I will have to do that area by hand. I will try to do as much as I can with the paper trimmer before coming in and cutting by hand, but now at least I can test out the size of the final product, and I do like how much is sticking up above the planner and that none of the other edges are poking out, but it is even with all the edges of the planner. So 1/4 of an inch around the whole thing worked out perfectly, and I wouldn't have wanted to get too much closer to the paper itself for fear of breaking that seal that the laminator makes. And then I will just go ahead and go through and trim what I can with my scissors and also use the paper trimmer to cut straight edges so that I'm not trying to freehand those. I know that I cannot cut freehand in a straight line, so the paper trimmer for me is the way to go. So I just trimmed around the curved edges of the tab area, and now I'm going to cut down the straight lines with the paper trimmer. And I'm just trying to be very particular where I am trimming the lamination at the top so that I don't cut too far to the tab and I don't cut too close to the actual paper. If you have any questions about the steps that I've taken, please reach out to me. I'm happy to clarify anything if I didn't explain it well enough. But I really am liking how this turned out, and I'm glad I kept moving forward, even though I was a little afraid that it wasn't going to be big enough. I had thought also about making one before videoing it and sharing it, but really I didn't have a ton of time on this particular day, and I really wanted this pencil board in the planner, so I just went for it, and thankfully it ends up turning out. Right now I'm just trying to trim a little bit closer to that tab so that there isn't a bunch of the laminator sheet left over. And for right now, I'm just leaving the corners of everything sharp because I do have a punch that does the corner rounding. So I'll grab that here in just a minute when I am done trimming everything down and I'm happy with the trims. If you do the corner rounding and then you trim more, you have to come back in and re-round the corners anyway. The corner rounder that I have, there are 3 different options and I'm just trying to match it to the corner that already was rounded on the lamination sheet. And once I figure that out, I will go ahead and corner around the other corners. I do have to freehand the tab area as well as that last corner, but at least it won't poke me. Those corners of the laminating sheets can get a little sharp if they are 90-degree corners. And once I get done trimming this, that is pretty much it. This took me about 35 minutes from start to finish, and the only thing that I had done prior to starting this video was pick the products that I wanted to use and then also make my Photoshop file with my word of the quarter and this quote from James Clear. But look how cute this pencil board turned out. I am so happy that I went ahead and just did this myself and did not try to find one that was pre-made that I could just purchase. This was very easy to make, and if you own a laminator, there is no reason why you can't make one too. I do think that the sizing is about perfect. I could have gone a little bit bigger on the initial sheet of paper and cut a little bit tighter on the laminating if I had wanted to, but I think that this turned out wonderfully and I cannot wait to start using it in this planner. If you would like to continue on the planner journey with me, I'd love to have you. And I am putting out a personal invitation for you to subscribe and leave me a comment down below what your favorite planner is right now. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope I see you in my next video. Bye!